Who will the Minnesota Vikings select with the 23rd pick in the 2023 NFL Draft? They don't have a second-round pick, and they won't pick again until pick number 87. Could a trade down be a strong possibility? Who would have to be there for them to make the pick? We talk about that and more next on Draft Brothers. All right, welcome to the Draft Brothers podcast for all things 2023 NFL Draft. In this episode, we'll be taking a closer look at what the Vikings could do. I'm your host, Jeff Hasley, and I'm joined by my draft brother, Dan Turner. And our guest today is Tyler Fornes. He's the managing editor of the Vikings Wire. And Tyler's going to help us understand what the Vikings might do in the draft. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
I just got to ask, Dan, is that a Zelda shield behind you?
Yes. Yes, it is.
God, that's tremendous.
I have that and the Master Sword above that. So,
listen, yeah. I'm a nerd at heart. That rules so much. Gentlemen, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on, and this is going to be a wild few days leading up to the draft.
Oh yeah, I mean we got a lot to talk about, and we might as well get to it. Let's do it. All right, so my question to you, Tyler. With no second-round pick that I already mentioned, could Minnesota be a candidate for trading out of pick number 23? I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts there. Who would have to be there in order for them to make that pick and not trade out?
One of the top 4 quarterbacks. And if you read Peter King's mock draft in Football Morning in America, Anthony Richardson was there at 23, but Hendon Hooker was not.
Yeah.
That floored me for a number of reasons. Richardson is incredibly patient and poised in the pocket. And even though he has accuracy concerns, it's all mechanical. He just does not have a lot of reps or experience, and you can fix that. You give him reps and experience. He's already flashed growth over the course of the last year at Florida, and he's already flashed brilliance with his mechanics and the ability to utilize them properly. He just needs time. He's 20 years old, 13 career starts. The fact that a guy with his raw ability, his talent and athletic profile is there at 23 absolutely floored me. I think that's the only way the Vikings end up picking at 23, or if nobody's willing to move up, because this class has like a huge talent gap between like the first, I'd say 5-10 picks, and then pick 20 to 60 is relatively similar. So there might not be a team willing to trade up. Right. Or with any kind of capable package that Kwesi be willing to take. I almost guarantee that he trades down, unless there's a quarterback within spitting distance. Because the Draft Network's Jamie Eisner had the Vikings trading up to 2. Nobody's made that kind of move up into the top 3 before when they've been sitting in the 20s. They've always had to move up and then get up. There's been a couple trades from 16 and 17 to 1. But it's 23. That's a long way to go. So I think it's almost a sure thing that the Vikings trade. And I'd put it about 80-85% that they trade back.
Yeah, you made a good point about Anthony Richardson. And it's only been not even a week or so. Unless you tell me if I'm wrong here. But it seems like that news has only been kind of recent as far as the Vikings having interest in Richardson. And like you said, he needs experience. Everything else is there. So, I'm really curious to see what they might do. It would take an awful lot for them to move up to grab him, unless, of course, he falls. And then the question is, well, how far will he fall? How far do you think he'll fall so you can trade up to the spot to get him if you were indeed to go that route? So,
and it takes 2 to tango, right? There has to be a team being willing to move down to 23, which honestly is the hardest part about these trade negotiations. I can offer you the farm. But if you want the guy that's sitting at your spot, you still have to say yes. That to me is going to be the toughest aspect of any attempt to trade up.
Yeah, in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah did have that deal with the Lions pre-negotiated, where if the Vikings guys were gone, and we've come to find out later, if it was Garrett Wilson, the Vikings would have taken Garrett Wilson. But they did not believe in Jamison Williams at the same level, so they made the trade, which, depending on which trade chart you look at, the Vikings or Lions won the trade, but I think the Vikings ended up winning based on how they kind of use those picks to continue to manipulate the draft. Because without that move, they don't fleece the Packers for 2 seconds to get up to 34. and then they package that to get Andrew Booth and vice versa.
If you like sports and playing sporting games, download the Champions Round app. Get playing and start winning. Use the promo code DraftBros for a free $10 and check out our newest game mode, Spicy Slips. If you love live sports gaming, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and you want some extra action this NFL offseason, come play Spicy Slips. Build a 2 to 5 leg parlay of live props and win big today.
So a little bit of breaking news today. From a Vikings perspective, how do you feel about Aaron Rodgers finally leaving the division and going over to the Jets?
Thank God. Listen,
the exact reaction I was hoping for.
Here's the thing with being a Vikings fan. I was born in 1989. The Packers have started a Hall of Fame quarterback since 1992. Outside of a few missed games from Aaron Rodgers, they've had their starting quarterback's been a Hall of Famer since 1992. If Jordan Love becomes a Hall of Famer, that's the beginning of my Joker arc. There's a level of torture with Minnesota sports fans that a lot of sports fans just don't understand. And having Jordan Love be great would just be the continuous torture that we continue to suffer. The multiple screw jobs in the NFC Championship game, the missed draft picks in the early 2000s. Nobody knows torture like a Minnesota sports fan, and that would just be an awful continuation.
We are talking Vikings draft with Tyler Fornes. He's the managing editor of the Vikings Wire, and you can follow him on Twitter at @TheRealForno. That's at @TheRealForno. And of course, you can also follow the Vikings Wire at the Vikings Wire on Twitter. So, Tyler, hopefully they can trade out of the first round to gather more picks, get that second round pick if they have the opportunity to do so. What positional group would you say is the biggest need in terms of improvement as we head into the 2023 season?
I like how you framed that. Need of the most improvement, not necessarily the biggest need. I honestly thought the corner room was relatively fine last year. It wasn't their fault that Ed Donatel put them in poor positions. I think just adding Brian Flores will immediately improve this defense upwards of 10 spots. If they were around the 20th ranked defense next year, I wouldn't be shocked. There's talent voids, but they were just put in positions to fail consistently. And that was the biggest reason why they were so bad. Obviously, you lose Eric Kendricks, but you have a speedy player in Brian Asamoah ready to step up. He made a huge play in that Christmas Eve game against the Giants that really helped turn the tide and get the Vikings back on track. I'd say the one position that needs to be upgraded more than any is wide receiver. And it's very interesting to have that conversation because you have Justin Jefferson. You make the trade for TJ Hawkinson. I like KJ Osborne. I think he's a very solid football player. But is he the guy you want as your number 2 opposite of Justin Jefferson? To me, the answer is no. And that's not a shade on KJ. I think he's good. The Vikings drafted him and they announced him as a punt returner. And he's made himself into a capable wide receiver who probably gets $10 million on the open market next year. But I need more from that wide receiver 2 spot. I need somebody with explosiveness. I need somebody who can manipulate routes consistently. KJ's fine on crossers and stuff, but he's not a guy who's going to manipulate you. He is better than average. I want way above average. I want that guy who can separate, who can take a top off the defense to complement Justin Jefferson and to have KJ Osborne as my number 3. If there's one area that we can improve, I think it's wide receiver. And you have to be able to take pressure off Jefferson. Otherwise, teams are just going to spend all their resources clamping him. And all of a sudden, you're kind of in a bad spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Building on that question, is there any particular draft prospect that you would like to see? And this could be, let's throw in a second round. Let's say you do get a second round pick, or perhaps pick 87. Is there a guy that you think, is there a certain build or frame that you're looking for as far as a wide receiver that would fill that role? I guess Thielen's role.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think there's a specific prototype that I need. I don't need the big guy. I don't need the speedy guy. I want a capable receiver that can do different things to help alleviate the pressure from Justin Jefferson. Take advantage of being the third or fourth target, because you do have TJ Hawkinson. He's going to get a lot of touches. They're going to try and maximize him in a similar way to like a Mark Andrews, a Travis Kelce. Like, he's not those players, but he's going to demand that kind of target share. And quite frankly, he proved that he deserves that kind of target share last year. There's a saying in the scouting community, you're drafting a tight end for their next team. Very rarely do you get a tight end and you actually get excess value from them. So I think the Vikings trading down from the second and third round to the fourth in the next two drafts to be able to get a guy like Hawkinson, I thought was a really smart move, and try to take advantage of a market inequity. And I just want that guy to be able to do a lot of those things. Couple that I really have my eye on. I'm in love with Quentin Johnston. I understand that he needs to learn a lot of nuance, but the thing with the air raid offense is they don't really teach you a lot of that nuance. And I think a couple years in the NFL, teach him how to lean, teach him how to understand and manipulate leverage, teach him how to run routes to be more deceptive. Like, when he's running a go route, he doesn't try to keep his body low so he can cut it inside to try and keep the defender off their feet a little bit. He kind of just sells that he's running straight forward, and that can hinder his ability to separate and get open. If he learns those things, combined with his incredibly quick feet, his great yards after catch ability, and the explosive metrics, and he's a better leaper than people want to give him credit for, because a lot of the contested catches that didn't count were balls thrown out of bounds, and he leaped for them, and he made great catches, but they were out of bounds because Max Duggan is bad. That's just kind of the way it is. Another guy I'd be looking for is the captain of my All Forno team, which is just like my favorite players in the class, and that's Josh Downs. He plays a lot bigger than 5'9", 171. He's incredibly explosive in and out of breaks. He can go get contested catches, 71% contested catch rate last year, number one among all draft prospects in this class. I think he has some work to do. I'd like to see him gain 5 to 10 pounds of muscle and try to keep that quick twitch explosiveness in and out of routes. But if he beats press coverage well enough, and with how they like to use motion in this offense, motion him and keep him from getting a lot of those press looks, I think you can have a real talent there opposite of Justin Jefferson.
Sounds like they have some options for sure. Dan, any additional questions for Tyler?
Yeah. So, covered wide receiver really extensively. That was a great answer. Thank you. As far as running back goes, you have Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison. So the question, I think, is going into next year, is Cook still the answer? Does it switch over, to Mattison if Cook gets cut or traded, or do you guys go in the draft and maybe take a look at a running back, or is it a combination of all three?
Cook is gone this weekend. I don't know where he'll go. I had heard that they already have a deal worked out with an AFC team for a post-June 1st trade. Now, unlike a post-June 1st cut, you can designate that early. You can't do that with a trade. The salary cap implications are what they would be the day of the trade. So they could potentially trade him during the draft. They could potentially release him, which I'd heard that was on the table, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. But he's not going to play here next year. He just won't. Alexander Mattison, I'm not high on at all. He can't see the field. And he's just an average back who gets most of his yards by ramming into you. Like, he doesn't try to be super evasive. He's not super explosive. He doesn't have long speed. Like, I just think he's a guy, and I was really disappointed when they chose to re-sign him, because I thought you could have done better, especially with this draft class, which has a lot of different flavors to it. I love the idea of getting like a Zach Charbonnet, who is a little bit of everything, but while he can be that bulldozer guy, he doesn't try to be. He does it when he has to. He's got quick enough feet. He's got good burst through the hole. Long speed's not great, but he can do everything at a high level. He's my number 3 back in this class. If you want to go the other way, Ty J. Spears from Tulane. Very shifty. He had those couple reps at the Senior Bowl where the jaw just dropped from the crowd because of how explosive he was in and out of his routes. I love Spears. That USC game really opened a lot of people's eyes who hadn't been watching Tulane football. I think getting a running back in this class is smart, but you don't have to get one early. Like, you can get an Eric Gray in around 5 or 6, and I love Eric Gray and what his skill set is. That for 5'9", he's built really well. In person, his legs are massive. That guy can drive. He can block with leverage. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can do a little bit of everything, just not the long speed. Like, there's elements to this running back room that could really be improved in the draft, and I'm kind of intrigued what they could do there.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what Dalvin Cook could fetch as far as a trade bait. So that could help out with picks as well. And like you mentioned, there's already some good options that you could turn to in the draft for that position. So, all right, let's turn to our next segment here, which is called One Quick Question. This is a yes or no answer here. I'm just going to ask the question, and Tyler, you say yes or no. Dan, yes or no, and I'll say yes or no. Will TJ Hawkinson have 90-plus catches in 2023? I'll start with you, Tyler. Yes. Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I say yes, too. He had 86 last year. 90 should be fairly easy to come. Well, not easy, but he should be able to see an increase, especially with Adam Thielen out of the rotation. So
that's what, like, it's 5.25 receptions per game. That's not asking a lot. Like, that's very doable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like it. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate you sharing your expertise and insights on the Vikings draft plans. Be sure that you follow Tyler, his Twitter handle, as I said before, @TheReal4No, @TheReal4No. And we appreciate your support. Please do us a favor. If you like the show, consider subscribing and leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts on the Vikings draft. And, that stuff really does help out our channel, so appreciate that. Download the Champions Round app and use the free $10 bonus code. And make sure you check out our separate video on the Vikings mock draft. We'll do a 3-round mock draft here with Tyler, and we'll have that up for you shortly. So check that out. And your entertainment is our passion. We'll see you next time when we talk about the Buffalo Bills.